The Third Eye by Tuesday Lobsang Rampa. Read to you by BlueFriend. Chapter 9. At the Wild Rose Fence. The next morning we made our leisurely preparations to return to Chakpori. For us, the Patala visit was quite a holiday. Before leaving, I rushed up to the roof to have a last look at the countryside through the telescope. On a roof of the Chakpori, a small acolyte was lying on his back reading, and occasionally tossing small pebbles onto the bald heads of monks in the courtyard. Through the glass, I could see the impish grin on his face as he ducked back out of sight of the puzzled monks below. It made me acutely uncomfortable to realize that the Dalai Lama had no doubt watched me do similar tricks. In future, I resolved, I would confine my efforts to the side of the buildings hidden from the Patala. But it was time to leave, time to say our thanks to those monks who had worked to make our short stay so pleasant. Time to be particularly nice to the Dalai Lama's personal steward. He had charge of the foods from India. I must have pleased him because he made me a farewell gift which I was not slow to eat. Then, fortified, we started down the steps of our way back to the Iron Mountain. As we reached halfway, we became aware of shouts and calls, and passing monks pointed back behind us. We stopped, and a breathless monk rushed down and gasped out a message to the Lama Mingyar Dondap. My guide halted. "Wait here for me, Lobsang. I shall not be very long." With that, he turned and walked up the steps again. I idled around, admiring the view and looking at my former home. Thinking of it, I turned and almost fell over backwards as I saw my father riding towards me. As I looked at him, he looked at me, and his lower jaw dropped slightly as he recognized me. Then, to my unutterable pain, he ignored me and rode on. I looked at his retreating back and called, "Father!" He took no notice whatsoever, but rode stolidly on. My eyes felt hot, and I began to tremble, and I thought that I was going to disgrace myself in public on the steps of the Patala, of all places. With more self-control than I thought I possessed, I straightened my back and gazed out over Lhasa. After about half an hour, the Lama Mingyar Dondap came riding down the steps and leading another horse. "Get on, Lobsang. We have to get to Sera in a hurry. One of the abbots there has had a bad accident." I saw that there was a case tied to each saddle and guessed that it was my guide's equipment. Along the Lingkor road we galloped, past my former home, scattering pilgrims and beggars alike. It did not take us long to reach Sera Lamisary, where monks were waiting for us. We jumped off the horses, each carrying a case, and an abbot led us to where an old man lay on his back. His face was the color of lead, and the life force seemed to be flickering almost to a halt. The Lama Mingyar Dondap called for boiling water, which was ready, and into it he dropped certain herbs. While I was stirring this, the Lama examined the old man, who had a fractured skull as a result of falling. A piece of bone was depressed and was exerting pressure on the brain. When the liquid was cool enough, we mopped the old man's head with it, and my guide cleaned his hands with some of it. Taking a sharp knife from his case, he quickly made a U-shaped cut through the flesh, right through to the bone. There was little bleeding. The herbs prevented it. More herbal lotion was mopped on, and the flap of flesh was turned back and cleared away from the bone. Very, very gently, the Lama Mingyar Dondap examined the area and found where the skull bone had been crushed in and was hanging below the normal level of the skull. He had put a lot of instruments into a bowl of disinfecting lotion before commencing. Now he took from the bowl 2 silver rods, flattened at one end, and with serrations in the flat part. With extreme care he inserted the thinnest edge into the widest fracture of the bone, and held it rigidly while he took a firmer grip of the bone with the other rod. Gently, very gently, he prised up the flap of the bone so that it was just above the normal level. He wedged it there with one rod and said, "Now pass the bowl, Lobsang." I held it so that he could take what he wanted, and he took a small spike of silver, just a minute triangular wedge. This he pressed into the crack between the normal skull bone and the fractured edge, which was now slightly above the level. Slowly he pressed the bone a little. It moved slightly, and he pressed just a little more. The level was now normal. "It will knit together, and the silver, being an inert metal, will cause no trouble." He mopped the area with more herbal lotion and carefully put back the flap of flesh which had been attached by one side. With boiled hair from a horse's tail, he stitched the flap and covered the site of the operation with an herbal paste tied in place with boiled cloth. The old abbot's life force had been growing stronger since the pressure was relieved from his brain. We propped him up with cushions so that he was in a semi-sitting position. I cleaned the instruments in fresh boiling lotion, dried them on boiled cloth, and packed everything carefully back into the 2 cases. As I was cleaning my hands after, the old man's eyes flickered open, and he gave a weak smile as he saw the Lama Mingyar Dondap bending over him. "I knew that only you could save me. That is why I sent the mind message to the peak. My task is not yet finished, and I am not ready to leave the body." My guide looked at him carefully and replied, "You will recover from this. A few days of discomfort, a headache or 2, and when that has gone, you can go about your work. For a few days you must have someone with you when you sleep, so that you do not lie flat. After 3 or 4 days, you will have no cause for worry." I had gone to the window and was looking out. It was quite interesting to see conditions in another Lamisary. The Lama Mingyar Dondap came to me and said, "You did well then, Lobsang. We shall make a team. Now I want to show you around this community. It is very different from ours." We left the old abbot in the care of a lama and went out into the corridor. The place was not so clean as at Chakpori, nor did there seem to be any strict discipline. Monks seemed to come and go as they pleased. The temples were uncared for compared to ours, and even the incense was more bitter. Gangs of boys were playing in the courtyard. At Chakpori they would have been hard at work. The prayer wheels were for the most part unturned. Here and there an aged monk sat and twirled the wheels, but there was none of the order, cleanliness, and discipline which I had come to take as average. My guide said, "Well, Lobsang, would you like to stay here and have their easy life?" "No, I would not. I think there are a lot of savages here, I said. He laughed. 7,000 of them. It is always the noisy few who bring the silent majority into disrepute. That may be fine, I replied, but although they call this the rose fence, that is not what I would call it. He looked at me with a smile. I believe you would take on the job of bringing discipline to this lot single-handed. It was a fact that our Lamisary had the strictest discipline of any. Most of the others were very lax indeed, and when the monks there wanted to laze, well, they just lazed, and nothing was said about it. Sarah, or the Wild Rose Fence it is really called, is 3 miles from the Patala and is one of the lamasaries known as the 3 Seats. Drepung is the largest of the 3, with not less than 10,000 monks. Sarah comes next in importance, with about 7,500 monks, while Ganden is the least important, with a mere 6,000. Each is like a complete town, with streets, colleges, temples, and all the usual buildings that go to make up a township. The streets were patrolled by the men of Kam. Now, no doubt, they are patrolled by communist soldiers. Chakpori was a small community, but an important one. As the temple of medicine, it was then the seat of medical learning, and was well represented in the council chamber of the government. At Chakpori, we were taught what I shall term Judo. That is the nearest English word I can find, the Tibetan description of Sung Thru Kiam Pa Tu De Pola Le La Po cannot be translated, nor can our technical word of Amri. Judo is a very elementary form of our system. Not all lamasaries have this training, but we at Chakpori were taught it to give us self-control, to enable us to deprive others of consciousness for medical purposes, and to enable us to travel safely in rougher parts of the country. As medical lamas, we traveled extensively. Old Tzu had been a teacher of the art, perhaps the best exponent of it in Tibet, and he taught me all he knew, for his own satisfaction in doing a job well. Most men and boys knew the elementary holds and throws, but I knew them when I was 4 years of age. This art, we believe, should be used for self-defense and self-control, and not after the manner of a prize fighter. We are of the opinion that the strongest man can afford to be gentle, while the weak and unsure brag and boast. Our judo was used to deprive a person of consciousness when, for instance, setting bones or extracting teeth. There is no pain with it and no risk. A person can be made unconscious before he is aware of its onset, and he can be restored to full consciousness hours or seconds later without ill effect. Curiously enough, a person made unconscious while speaking will complete the sentence upon awakening. Because of the obvious dangers of this higher system, this and instant hypnotism were taught only to those who could pass most stringent tests of character. And then hypnotic blocks were imposed so that one should not abuse the powers conferred. In Tibet, a lamisary is not merely a place where men of religious inclination live, but a self-contained town with all the usual facilities and amenities. We had our theatres in which to see religious and traditional plays. Musicians were ever ready to entertain us and prove that in no other community were there such good players. Those monks who had money were able to buy food, clothing, luxuries, and books in the shops. Those who desired to save deposited their cash in the Lamastic equivalent of a bank. All communities in any part of the world have their offenders against the rules. Ours were arrested by monk police and taken off to a court where they were given a fair trial. If found guilty, they had to serve their sentence in the Lamastic prison. Schools of various types catered for all grades of mentality. Bright boys were helped to make their way, but in all lamasaries other than Chakpori, the slothful person was permitted to sleep or dream his life away. Our idea was, one cannot influence the life of another, so let him catch up in his next incarnation. At Chakpori, matters were different, and if one did not make progress, one was compelled to leave and seek sanctuary elsewhere, where the discipline was not so strict. Our sick monks were well treated. We had a hospital in the lamasaries, and the indisposed were treated by monks who were trained in medicine and elemental surgery. The more severe cases were treated by specialists, such as the Lama Mingyar Dondap. Quite often since leaving Tibet, I have had to laugh at the Western stories about Tibetans thinking that a man's heart is on the left side and a woman's is on the right. We saw enough dead bodies cut open to know the truth. I have also been much amused about the filthy Tibetans riddled with VD. The writers of such statements apparently have never been in those convenient places in England and America where the local citizenry are offered free and confidential treatment. We are filthy. Some of our women, for instance, put stuff on the face and have to mark the position of the lips so that one cannot miss. Most times they put stuff on their hair to make it shine or to alter the color. They even pluck eyebrows and color nails, sure signs that Tibetan women are filthy and depraved. But to return to our Lamastic community, often there were visitors. They might be traders or monks. They were given accommodation in the Lamastic hotel. They also paid for such accommodation. Not all monks were celibate. Some thought that single blessedness did not induce the right frame of mind for contemplation. Those were able to join a special sect of red hat monks who were permitted to marry. They were in the minority. The yellow hats, a celibate sect, were the ruling class in religious life. In married lamasaries, monks and nuns worked side by side in a well-ordered community, and most times the atmosphere there was not so rough as in a purely male community. Certain lamasaries had their own printing works so that they could print their own books. Usually they made their own paper. This latter was not a healthy occupation because one form of tree bark used in paper manufacture was highly poisonous. While this prevented any insect from attacking Tibetan paper, it also had a bad effect on the monks, and those who worked at this trade complained of severe headaches and worse. In Tibet, we did not use metal type. All our pages were drawn on wood of suitable character, and then Everything, except the drawn outlines, was pared away, leaving the parts to be printed standing high above the rest of the board. Some of these boards were 3 feet wide by 18 inches deep, and the detail would be quite intricate. No board containing the slightest mistake was used. Tibetan pages are not like the pages of this book, which are longer than they are wide. We used wide and short pages, and they were always unbound. The various loose sheets were kept between carved wooden covers. In printing, the carved board of page contents was laid flat. One monk ran an ink roller over the whole surface, making sure of even distribution. Another monk took up a sheet of paper and quickly spread it on the board, while a third monk followed with a heavy roller to press the paper well down. A fourth monk lifted off the printed page and passed it to an apprentice who put it to one side. There were very few smudged sheets. These were never used for the book, but were kept for the apprentices to practice on. At Chakpori we had carved wooden boards about 6 feet high and about 4 feet wide. These had carvings of the human figure and the various organs. From them were made wall charts, which we had to color. We had astrological charts as well. The charts on which we erected horoscopes were about 2 feet square. In effect, they were maps of the heavens at the time of a person's conception and birth. On the map blanks, we inserted the data which we found in the carefully prepared mathematical tables which we published. After looking over the rose fence Lamisary, and in my case comparing it unfavorably with ours, we returned to the room to see the old abbot again. During the 2 hours of our absence he had improved very greatly, and was now able to take much greater interest in things around him. In particular, he was able to pay attention to the Lama Mingyar Dondap, to whom he seemed very attached. My guide said, "We must leave now, but here are some powdered herbs for you. I will give full instructions to your priest in charge as we leave." 3 little leather bags were taken from his case and handed over. 3 little bags which meant life instead of death to an aged man. In the entrance courtyard we found a monk holding 2 deplorably frisky ponies. They had been fed and rested and were now very ready to gallop. I was not. Fortunately for me, the Lama Mingyar Dondap was quite content for us to amble along. The rose fence is about 3,700 yards from the nearest part of the Lingkor road. I was not anxious to pass my old home. My guide evidently caught my thoughts, for he said, "We will cross the road to the street of shops. There is no hurry. Tomorrow is a new day which we have not yet seen." I was fascinated to look at the shops of the Chinese traders and to listen to their high, shrill voices as they bickered and chaffered at the prices. Just opposite their side of the street was a chortan, symbolizing immortality of the ego, and behind that loomed a gleaming temple to which the monks of nearby Shid Gompa were streaming. A few minutes' ride and we were in the lanes of cluttered houses which clustered as if for protection in the shadow of the Zhou Kang. Ah, I thought, last time I was here I was a free man, not training to be a monk. Wish it was all a dream and that I could wake up. Down the road we ambled, and turned right to the road which led over the turquoise bridge. The Lama, Mingyar Dondap, turned to me and said, "So, you still do not want to be a monk? It is quite a good life, you know. At the end of this week, the annual party are going to the hills to gather herbs. This time I do not want you to go. Instead, study with me so that you can take the examination for Trapa when you are 12. I have planned to take you on a very special expedition to the highlands to obtain some very rare herbs." Just then we had reached the end of the village of Sho, and were approaching the Pargo Kaling, the western gate of the valley of Lhasa. A beggar shrunk against the wall. "Oh, Reverend Holy Lama of Medicine, please do not cure me of my ills, or my living is gone." My guide looked sad as we rode through the chorten forming the gate. So many of these beggars, Lobsang, so unnecessary. It is they who give us a bad name abroad. In India and in China, where I went with the Precious One, people talked of the beggars of Lhasa, not realizing that some of them were rich. Well, perhaps after the fulfillment of the prophecy of the year of the Iron Tiger, the beggars will be put to work. Note, that was 1950 when the communists invaded Tibet. You and I will not be here to see it, Lobsang. For you, foreign lands. For me, a return to the heavenly fields. It made me sad beyond measure to think that my beloved Lama would leave me, leave this life. Not then did I realize that life on earth was but an illusion, a testing place, a school. A knowledge of man's behavior to those beset by adversity was beyond me. Now it is not. Left, we turned into the Lingor road, past the Kundu Ling, and left again to our own road leading up to the Iron Mountain. I never tired of looking at the colored rock carving which made up one side of our mountain. The whole cliff face was covered with carvings and paintings of deities. But the day was far advanced, and we had no more time to spare. As we rode up, I thought of the herb gatherers. Every year a party from the Chakpori went to the hills to gather herbs, dried them, and packed them into airtight bags. Here in the hills was one of the great storehouses of nature's remedies. Very few people indeed had ever been to the highlands, where there were things too strange to discuss. Yes, I decided I could well forego a visit to the hills this year, and I would study hard so that I should be fit to accompany the expedition to the highlands when the Lama Mingyar Dondap thought fit. The astrologers had said that I would pass the examination at the first attempt, but I knew that I should have to study hard. I knew that the prediction meant if I studied hard enough. My mental stage was at least equivalent to an 18-year-old boy. As always, I had mixed with people much older than I, and I had to fend for myself. End of Chapter 9. Chapter 10. Tibetan Beliefs. It may be of some interest to give here some details of our way of life. Our religion is a form of Buddhism, but there is no word which can be transliterated. We refer to it as the religion, and to those of our faith as insiders. Those of other beliefs are termed outsiders. The nearest word already known in the West is Lamaism. It departs from Buddhism in that ours is a religion of hope and a belief in the future. Buddhism to us seems negative, a religion of despair. We certainly do not think that an all-seeing Father is watching and guarding everyone, everywhere. Many learned people have passed erudite comment on our religion. Many of them have condemned us because they were blinded by their own faith and could see no other point of view. Some have even called us satanic because our ways are alien to them. Most of these writers have based their opinions on hearsay or on the writings of others. Possibly a very few have studied our beliefs for a few days and have then felt competent to know all, to write books on the subject, and to interpret and make known that which it takes our cleverest sages a lifetime to discover. Imagine the teachings of a Buddhist or Hindu who had flipped through the pages of the Christian Bible for an hour or two and then tried to explain all the subtler points of Christianity. None of these writers on Lamaism has lived as a monk in a Lamisary from early boyhood and studied the sacred books. These books are secret because they are not available to those who want quick, effortless, and cheap salvation. Those who want the solace of some ritual, some form of self-hypnosis, can have it if it will help them. It is not the inner reality, but childish self-deception. To some, it may be very comforting to think that sin after sin can be committed, and then, when the conscience prods too much, a gift of some kind to the nearest temple will so overwhelm the gods with gratitude that forgiveness will be immediate, all-embracing, and certain, and will enable one to indulge in a fresh set of sins. There is a God, a supreme being. What does it matter what we call him? God is a fact. Tibetans who have studied the true teachings of Buddha never pray for mercy or for favors, but only that they may receive justice from man. A supreme being, as the essence of justice, cannot show mercy to one and not to another, because to do so would be a denial of justice. To pray for mercy or for favors, promising gold or incense if the prayer is answered, is to imply that salvation is available to the highest bidder, that God is short of money and can be bought. Man can show mercy to man, but very rarely does. The Supreme Being can show only justice. We are immortal souls. Our prayer, Om Mani Padme Hum, which is written below, is often translated literally as, Hail to the jewel of the lotus. We who have gone a little further know that the true meaning is, Hail to man's overself. There is death. As one doffs one's clothes at the end of day, so does the soul doff the body when the latter sleeps. As a suit of clothes is discarded when worn out, so does the soul discard the body when the latter is worn or torn. Death is birth. Dying is merely the act of being born in another plane of existence. Man, or the spirit of man, is eternal. The body is but the temporary garment that clothes the spirit, to be chosen according to the task in hand upon earth. Outward appearance does not matter. The soul within does. A great prophet may come in the guise of a pauper. How better can one judge of man's charity to man, while one who has sinned in a past life when there is not poverty to drive him on. The wheel of life is what we call the act of being born, living on some world, dying, going back to the spirit state, and in time being reborn in different circumstances and conditions. A man may suffer much in a life. It does not necessarily mean that he was evil in a past life. It may be the best and quickest way of learning certain things. Practical experience is a better teacher than hearsay. One who commits suicide may be reborn to live out the years cut short in the past life, but it does not follow that all who die young, or as babies, were suicides. The wheel of life applies to all, beggars and kings, men and women, colored people and white. The wheel is but a symbol, of course, but one which makes matters clear to those who have no time to make a long study of the subject. One cannot explain Tibetan belief in a paragraph or two. The Kangyur, or Tibetan scriptures, consist of over 100 books on the subject, and even then it is not fully dealt with. There are many books hidden within remote lamisaries which are seen by initiates alone. For centuries, people of the East have known of the various occult forces and laws, and that these were natural. Instead of trying to disprove such forces on the grounds that as they could not be weighed or tested with acids, they could not exist, Eastern scientists and researchers have striven to increase their command over these laws of nature. The mechanics of clairvoyance, for example, did not interest us. The results of clairvoyance did. Some people doubt clairvoyance. They are like the born blind who say that sight is impossible because they have not experienced it, because they cannot understand how an object some distance away can be seen when there is clearly no contact between it and the eyes. People have auras, colored outlines which surround the body, and by the intensity of those colors, those experienced in the art can deduce a person's health, integrity, and general state of evolution. The aura is the radiation of the inner life force, the ego or soul. Around the head is a halo or nimbus, which also is part of the force. At death, the light fades as the ego leaves the body on its journey to the next stage of existence. It becomes a ghost. It drifts a little, perhaps dazed by the sudden shock of being free of the body. It may not be fully aware of what is happening. That is why lamas attend the dying, that they may be informed of the stages through which they will pass. If this is neglected, the spirit may be earthbound by desires of the flesh. It is the duty of the priest to break these ties. At frequent intervals, we had a service for guiding the ghosts. Death has no terror for Tibetans, but we believe that one can have an easier passage from this life to the next if certain precautions are taken. It is necessary to follow clearly defined paths and to think along certain lines. The service would be conducted in a temple with about 300 monks present. In the center of the temple would be a group of perhaps 5 telepathic lamas sitting in a circle face to face. As the monks, led by an abbot, chanted, the lamas would try to maintain telepathic contact with distressed souls. No translation from the Tibetan prayers can do full justice to them, but here is an attempt. Hear the voices of our souls, all you who wander unguided in the borderlands. The living and the dead live in worlds apart. Where can their faces be seen and their voices heard? The first stick of incense is lit to summon a wandering ghost that he may be guided. Hear the voices of our souls, all you who wander. This is the world of illusion. Life is but a dream. All that are born must die. Only the way of Buddha leads to eternal life. The third stick of incense is lit to summon a wandering ghost that he may be guided. Hear the voices of our souls, all you of great power, you who have been enthroned with mountains and rivers under your rule. Your reigns have lasted but a moment, and the complaints of your people have never ceased. The earth runs with blood, and the leaves of the trees are swayed by the sighs of the oppressed. The fourth stick of incense is lit to summon the ghosts of kings and dictators that they may be guided. Hear the voices of our souls, all you warriors who have invaded, wounded, and killed. Where are your armies now? The earth groans and weeds grow over the battlefields. The fifth stick of incense is lit to summon lonely ghosts of generals and lords for guidance. Hear the voices of our souls, all artists and scholars, you who have worked at painting and writing. In vain you have strained your sight and worn down your ink slabs. Nothing of you is remembered, and your souls must continue on. The sixth stick of incense is lit to summon the ghosts of artists and scholars for guidance. Hear the voices of our souls, beautiful virgins and ladies of high degree, whose youth could be compared to a fresh spring morning. After the embrace of lovers comes the breaking of hearts. The autumn, then the winter comes. Trees and flowers fade, as do beauty, and become but skeletons. The seventh stick of incense is lit to summon the wandering ghosts of virgins and ladies of high degree, that they may be guided away from the ties of the world. Hear the voices of our souls, all beggars and thieves, and those who have committed crimes against others, and who cannot now obtain rest. Your soul wanders friendless in the world, and you have not justice within you. The eighth stick of incense is lit to summon all ghosts who have sinned and who now wander alone. Hear the voices of our souls, prostitutes, women of the night, and all those that have been sinned against, and who now wander alone in ghostly realms. The ninth stick of incense is lit to summon them for guidance, that they may be freed from the bonds of the world. In the incense-laden dusk of the temple, the flickering butter lamps would cause living shadows to dance behind the golden images. The air would grow tense with the concentration of the telepathic monks as they strove to maintain contact with those who had passed from the world and yet were still bound to it. Russet-robed monks, sitting in lines facing each other, would intone the litany of the dead, and hidden drums would beat out the rhythm of the human heart. From other parts of the temple, as in the living body, would come the growling of internal organs, the rustling of body fluids, and the sigh of air in the lungs. as the ceremony continued with directions to those who had passed over, the tempo of the body sounds would change, become slow, until at last would come the sounds of the spirit leaving the body. A rustling, quavering gasp, and silence. The silence that comes with death. Into that silence would come an awareness discernible to even the least psychic, that other things were around, waiting, listening. Gradually, as the telepathic instruction continued, the tension would lessen as the unquiet spirits moved on towards the next stage of their journey. We believe firmly that we are reborn time after time, but not merely to this earth. There are millions of worlds, and we know that most of them are inhabited. Those inhabitants may be in very different forms to those we know. They may be superior to humans. We in Tibet have never subscribed to the view that man is the highest and most noble form of evolution. We believe that much higher life forms are to be found elsewhere, and they do not drop atom bombs. In Tibet, I have seen records of strange craft in the skies. The chariots of the gods, most people called them. The Lama Mingyar Dondap told me that a group of lamas had established telepathic communications with these gods, who said that they were watching Earth, apparently in much the same way as humans watch wild and dangerous animals in a zoo. Much has been written about levitation. It is possible, as I have often seen it, but it takes much practice. There is no real point in engaging in levitation, as there is a far simpler system. Astral traveling is easier and surer. Most lamas do it, and anyone who is prepared to use some patience can indulge in the useful and pleasant art. During our waking hours on earth, our ego is confined to the physical body, and unless one is trained, it is not possible to separate them. When we sleep, it is only the physical body which needs rest. The spirit disengages itself and usually goes to the spirit realm in much the same way as a child returns home at the end of the school day. The ego and physical bodies maintain contact by means of the silver cord, which is capable of unlimited extension. The body stays alive so long as the silver cord is intact. At death, the cord is severed as the spirit is born into another life in the spirit world, just as a baby's umbilical cord is severed to part it from its mother. Birth to a baby is death to the sheltered life it led within the mother's body. Death to the spirit is birth again into the freer world of spirit. While the silver cord is intact, the ego is free to roam during sleep, or consciously in the case of those specially trained. The roaming of the spirit produces dreams, which are impressions transmitted along the silver cord. As the physical mind receives them, they are rationalized to fit in with one's earth belief. In the world of spirit, there is no time. Time is a purely physical concept, and so we have cases where long and involved dreams seem to occur in the fraction of a second. Probably everyone has had a dream in which a person far away, perhaps across the oceans, has been met and spoken to. Some message may have been given, and on awakening, there is usually a strong impression of something that should be remembered. Frequently, there is the memory of meeting a distant friend or relative, and it is no surprise to hear from the person within a very short time. In those who are untrained, the memory is often distorted, and the result is an illogical dream or nightmare. In Tibet, we travel much by astral projection, not by levitation, and the whole process is within our control. The ego is made to leave the physical body, although still connected to it by the silver cord. One can travel where one wills as quickly as one can think. Most people have the ability to engage in astral travel. Many have actually started out and, being untrained, have experienced a shock. Probably everyone has had the sensation of just drifting off to sleep and then, without apparent reason, being violently awakened by a powerful, sudden jerk. This is caused by too rapid exteriorization of the ego, an ungentle parting of physical and astral bodies. It causes contraction of the silver cord, and the astral is snatched back into the physical vehicle. It is a much worse feeling when one has traveled and is returning. The astral is floating many feet above the body, like a balloon at the end of a string. Something, perhaps some external noise, causes the astral to return to the body with excessive rapidity. The body awakes suddenly, and there is the horrible feeling that one has fallen off a cliff and awakened just in time. Astral traveling under one's full control, and while fully conscious, can be accomplished by almost anyone. It needs practice, but above all, in the early stages, it demands privacy, where one can be alone without fear of interruption. This is not a textbook of metaphysics, so there is no point in giving instructions on astral traveling, but it should be emphasized that it can be a disturbing experience unless one has a suitable teacher. There is no actual danger, but there is a risk of shocks and emotional disturbances if the astral body is allowed to leave or return to the physical out of phase or coincidence. People with heart weaknesses should never practice astral projection. While there is no danger in projection itself, there is grave danger to those with a weak heart if another person enters the room and disturbs the body or cord. The resulting shock could prove fatal, and this would be very inconvenient indeed, as the ego would have to be reborn to finish that particular span of life before it could proceed to the next stage. We Tibetans believe that everyone, before the fall of man, had the ability to travel in the astral, see by clairvoyance, telepathize, and levitate. Our version of that fall is that man abused the occult powers and used them for self-interest instead of for the development of mankind as a whole. In the earliest days, mankind could converse with mankind by telepathy. Local tribes had their own versions of vocal speech, which they used exclusively among themselves. The telepathic speech was, of course, by thought, and could be understood by all, regardless of local language. When the power of telepathy was lost through abuse, there was Babel. We do not have a Sabbath day as such. Ours are holy days and are observed on the 8th and 15th of each month. Then there are special services, and the days are regarded as sacred, and no work is normally done. Our annual festivals, I have been told, correspond somewhat to the Christian festivals, but my knowledge of the latter is quite insufficient for me to comment. Our festivals are: first month, this corresponds roughly to February. From the first to the third day, we celebrate Lhasa. This, in the Western world, would be called New Year. It is a great occasion for games as well as religious services. Our greatest ceremony of the day is held from the 4th to the 15th day. These are the days of supplication. Our name for it is Mon Lam. This ceremony really is the highlight of the religious and secular year. On the 15th day of this same month, we have the anniversary of Buddha's conception. This is not a time for games, but one of solemn thanksgiving. To complete the month, we have, on the 27th, a celebration which is partly religious, partly mythical. It is the procession of the Holy Dagger. With that, the events of the first month are ended. The second month, which approximates to March, is fairly free of ceremony. On the 29th day, there is the chase and expulsion of the demon of ill luck. The third month, April, also has very few public ceremonies. On the 15th day, there is the anniversary of Revelation. With the arrival of the 8th day of the 4th month, May by the Western calendar, we celebrate the anniversary of Buddha's renunciation of the world. This, so far as I understand, is similar to the Christian Lent. We had to live even more austerely during the days of renunciation. The 15th day was the anniversary of Buddha's death. We regarded it as the anniversary of all those who had left this life. All Souls' Day was another term for it. On that day, we burned our sticks of incense to call the spirits of those who wandered earthbound. It will be understood that these are merely the major festivals. There are many minor days which had to be marked and ceremonies attended, but which are not of sufficient importance to enumerate here. June was the month when on the 5th day we medical lamas had to attend special ceremonies at other lamisaries. The celebrations were of thanks for the ministrations of the medical monks, of which Buddha was the founder. On that day we could do no wrong, but on the day after we were certainly called to account for what our superiors imagined we had done. The anniversary of Buddha's birth came on the 4th day of the 6th month, July. Then also we celebrated the first preaching of the law. Harvest Festival was on the 8th day of the 8th month, October. Because Tibet is an arid country, very dry, we depended upon the rivers to a much greater extent than in other countries. Rainfall was slight in Tibet, so we combined Harvest Festival with a water festival, as without water from the rivers there would be no harvest from the land. The 22nd day of the 9th month, November, was the anniversary of Buddha's miraculous descent from heaven. The next month, the 10th, we celebrate the Feast of the Lamps on the 25th day. The final religious events of the year were on the 29th to 30th days of the 12th month, which is the junction of January and February according to the Western calendar. At this time, we had the expulsion of the old year and making ready for the new. Our calendar is very different indeed from the Western. We use a 60-year cycle, and each year is indicated by 12 animals and 5 elements in various combination. Our new year is in February. It is our belief that the probabilities of the future can be foretold. To us, divination, by whatever means, is a science and is accurate. We believe in astrology. To us, astrological influences are but cosmic rays which are colored or altered by the nature of the body reflecting them to Earth. Anyone will agree that one can have a camera and a white light and take a picture of something. By putting various filters over the camera lens or over the light, we can arrange for certain effects on the finished photograph. We can get orthochromatic, panchromatic, or infrared effects, to mention 3 out of a large number. People are affected in a similar way by the cosmic radiation impinging upon their own chemical and electrical personality. Buddha says, stargazing and astrology, forecasting lucky or unfortunate events by signs, prognosticating good or evil, all these things are forbidden. But a later decree in one of our sacred books says, that power which is given to the few by nature, and for which that individual endures pain and suffering, may be used. No psychic power may be used for personal gain, for worldly ambition, or as proof of the reality of such powers. Only thus can those not so gifted be protected. My attainment of the third eye had been painful, and it had increased the power with which I had been born. But in a later chapter we will return to the opening of third eye. Here is a good place to mention more of astrology and quote the names of 3 eminent Englishmen who have seen an astrological prophecy which came true. Since 1027, all major decisions in Tibet have been taken with the aid of astrology. The invasion of my country by the British in 1904 was accurately foretold. On page 109 of this book is a reproduction of the actual prophecy in the Tibetan language, and it reads, in the year of the wood dragon, the first part of the year protects the Dalai Lama. After that, fighting and quarreling robbers come forward. There are many enemies, troublesome grief by weapons will arise, and the people will fight. At the end of the year, a conciliatory speaker will end the war. That was written before the year 1850 and concerns the year 1904, the Wood Dragon War. Colonel Younghusband was in charge of the British forces. He saw the prediction at Lhasa. A Mr. L.A. Waddell, also of the British Army, saw the printed prediction in the year 1902. Mr. Charles Bell, who later went to Lhasa, also saw it. Some other events which were accurately forecast were 1910, Chinese invasion of Tibet; 1911, Chinese revolution and formation of the nationalist government; late 1911, eviction of Chinese from Tibet; 1914, war between England and Germany; 1933, passing from this life of the Dalai Lama. 1935, return of a fresh incarnation of the Dalai Lama. 1950, evil forces would invade Tibet. The communists invaded Tibet in October 1950. Mr. Bell, later Sir Charles Bell, saw all those predictions in Lhasa. In my own case, everything foretold about me has come true, especially the hardships. The science, for science it is, of preparing a horoscope is not one which can be dealt with in a few pages of a book of this nature. Briefly, it consists of preparing a map of the heavens as they were at the time of conception and at the time of birth. The exact hour of birth has to be known, and that time has to be translated into star time, which is quite different from all the zone times of the world. As the speed of the Earth in its orbit is 19 miles a second, it will be seen that inaccuracy will make a tremendous difference. At the equator, the rotation of the Earth is about 1,040 miles an hour. The world is tilted as it rolls, and the North Pole is about 3,100 miles ahead of the South Pole in the autumn, but in spring the position is reversed. The longitude of the place of birth thus is of vital importance. When the maps are prepared, those with the necessary training can interpret their meanings. The interrelationships of each and every planet has to be assessed, and the effect on the particular map calculated. We prepare a conception chart to know the influences in force during the very first moments of a person's existence. The birth map indicates the influences at force at the moment the individual enters upon an unsuspecting world. To know of the future, we prepare a map of the time for which it is desired to have the reading and compare it with the natal chart. Some people say, "But can you really predict who is going to win the 230?" The answer is no, not without casting the horoscope for every man, horse, and horse owner concerned in the race. Closed eyes and a pin jabbing the starting list is the best method here. We can tell if a person will recover from an illness, or if Tom will marry Lucy and live happily ever afterwards, but that deals with individuals. We can also say that if England and America do not check communism, a war will start in the year of the Wood Dragon, which in this cycle is 1964. Then in that case, at the end of the century, there should be an attractive fireworks display to entertain any observers on Mars or Venus, assuming that the communists remain unchecked. A further point, which often seems to puzzle those of the Western world, is the question of tracing one's past lives. People who have no skill in the matter say that it cannot be done, just as a totally deaf man might say, "I hear no sound, therefore there is no sound." It is possible to trace previous lives. It takes time, much working out of charts and calculations. A person may stand at an airport and wonder about the last calls of arriving aircraft. The onlookers perhaps can make a guess, but the control tower staff, with their specialized knowledge, can say. If an ordinary sightseer has a list of aircraft registration letters and numbers and a good timetable, he may be able to work out the ports of call himself. So can we with past lives. It would need a complete book at least to make the process clear, and so it would be useless to delve more deeply now. It may be of interest to say what points Tibetan astrology covers. We use 19 symbols in the house of astrology. Those symbols indicate personality and self-interest, finances, how one can gain or lose money, relations, short journeys, mental and writing ability, property and the conditions at the close of life, children, pleasures and speculations, illness, work and small animals, partnerships, marriage, enemies, lawsuits, legacies, long journeys and psychic matters, profession and honors, friendships and ambitions, troubles, restraints, and occult sorrows. We can also tell the approximate time or under what conditions the following incidents will occur. Love, the type of person and the time of meeting. Marriage, when and how it will work out. Passion, the furious temper kind. Catastrophe, and how it will occur, or if it will. Fatality, death, when and how. Prison or other forms of restraint. Discord, usually family or business quarrels. Spirit, the stage of evolution reached. Although I do astrology quite a lot, I find psychometry and crystal gazing much more rapid and no whit less accurate. It is also easier when one is bad at figures. Psychometry is the art of picking up faint impressions of past events from an article. Everyone has this ability to some extent. People enter an old church or temple, hallowed by the passing years, and will say, "What a calm, soothing atmosphere." But the same people will visit the site of a gruesome murder and exclaim, "Oh, I don't like it here. It's eerie. Let's get out." Crystal gazing is somewhat different. The glass, as mentioned above, is merely a focus for the rays from the third eye, in much the same way as X-rays are brought to focus on a screen and show a fluorescent picture. There is no magic at all involved. It is merely a matter of utilizing natural laws. In Tibet, we have monuments to natural laws. Our chortens, which range in size from 5 feet to 50 feet high, are symbols which compare with the crucifix or icon. All over Tibet, these chortens stand. On the sketch map of Lhasa, 5 are shown. The Pargo Keiling is the largest and is one of the gates of the city. Chortens are always of the shape shown in the illustration below in this book. The square indicates the solid foundation of the earth. Upon it rests the globe of water, surrounded by a cone of fire. Above this is a saucer of air, and higher the wavering spirit or ether, which is waiting to leave the world of materialism. Each element is reached by the steps of attainment. The whole thing symbolizes the Tibetan belief. We come to earth when we are born. During our life we climb upwards, or try to, by way of the steps of attainment. Eventually our breath fails and we enter into the spirit. Then, after a varying interval, we are reborn to learn another lesson. The wheel of life symbolizes the endless round of birth, life, death, spirit, birth, life, and so on. Many ardent students make the serious mistake of thinking that we believe in these horrid hells, sometimes pictured on the wheel. A few illiterate savages may, but not those who have received enlightenment. Do Christians really believe that when they die, Satan and company gets busy with the roasting and racking? Do they believe that if they go to the other place, being one of the minority, they sit on a cloud in a nightshirt and take lessons in harp playing? We believe that we learn on earth, and that on earth we get our roasting and racking. The other place, to us, is where we go when out of the body, where we can meet entities who are also out of the body. This is not spiritualism. It is instead a belief that during sleep or after death we are free to wander in astral planes. Our own term for the higher reaches of these planes is the land of the golden light. We are sure that when we are in the astral, after death or when asleep, we can meet those we love because we are in harmony with them. We cannot meet those we dislike because that would be a state of disharmony, and such conditions cannot exist in the land of the golden light. All these things have been proved by time, and it does seem rather a pity that Western doubt and materialism have prevented the science from being properly investigated. Too many things have been scoffed at in the past and then proved right by the passage of the years. Telephones, radio, television, flying, and many more. End of chapter 10.